Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a review for you, and I'm going to be reviewing this paint set that was sent to me from Arteza. So they contacted me and they asked me if I'd like to do a review and if I'd like to pick out some products. So I decided to get the 60 colour set of their acrylic premium paints, and the whole box is $39.99, and I just think that's kind of amazing value for what you get. So this review is mainly going to be about how Arteza paints go through an airbrush. I do quite a lot of airbrushing, so for me, when I buy acrylic paints, I like to know that they're going to work in an airbrush, and these are not designed to go through an airbrush, so I got curious as to whether or not they will go through an airbrush, and if they'll do it well. Are they going to work well with my airbrush thinners? Because I don't know, I've not seen anybody do that yet, so let's find out. Another thing that I thought was really cool is that each tube tells you the Lightfastness and whether or not it's transparent or opaque. So the more plus signs there are, the more Lightfast that particular color is. So 3 is their maximum Lightfastness. So if it's less than 3, then it's going to be more prone to fading. But just about all of the paints in the box are at 3. And then it also has the little square. The square is either going to be half shaded or full shaded. So the full shaded square tells you that the paint is opaque, and the half shaded square lets you know that the paint is transparent. So you notice that she has some speckles on her. Usually I have a bright white resin, but I accidentally bought an off-white resin, so she's a slightly creamy color, and she has these little speckles because of the colorant that's in the resin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to airbrush her in a nice white base and just bring her up to a nice even flat white to start with. So I'm just using the titanium white, and I'm mixing it with the airbrush thinner from Vallejo, and I use this airbrush thinner in all my paints. And for an airbrush, the paint has to be relatively thinned out because you want it to flow through as smoothly as possible. And it's hard to see the paint going on because she's already an almost white color and the paint I'm using is white, but you can see on my black gloves how opaque the white actually is. It's a really quite nice base. It also smooths out the surface of the cast, which is really nice. I liked that. And then I mixed up a skin color. I don't remember which colors I used because I completely forgot to film it. So, miscellaneous skin color that I'll never be able to recreate. Then here I'm using a straight pink just to add some cheek blushing, and this is just a base. At the end I'll intensify the colour a bit more, but I'm just sort of creating a foundation for the skin at the moment. And then here I've used some painter's tape and some sticky tack just to cover up all the skin so that I can airbrush the mask. For the mask, we're going to be using Rose, which is a transparent colour, and Carmine Red, which is an opaque colour. This is like a pink and a red, basically. And again, I've just got to work through the paint and get out all the blobs, because as I said before, it's a heavy body paint, so we need to thin it down quite a lot before we can run it through the airbrush. But as you can see, it's coming out really well, and the surface is really smooth, so it's just giving a really great finish. Now, because it has so much thinner in it to help it run through the airbrush, you do lose a lot of opacity, so it does get quite transparent, so you are going to have to do quite a lot of layers. But the great thing about airbrushing is you can basically go ham, because you don't actually have to touch the surface, so you can just keep layering that colour on until it gets super vibrant. And this paint, such a great colour. Like, look at it, it's like neon. So I thought it worked out really great. I did go in at the end and use just the straight red just to do the ear tips, just to really boost that watermelon vibe. And then I'm coming in with white again, just to give a nice gradient for where the watermelon turns into rind. And you can see how nicely that covered over the red. I mean, that red was pretty vibrant, so I was really happy with how this was airbrushing. It was just working out really well. It cleans out of the airbrush really easily too. They also sent me a set of detail paint brushes. They're a synthetic brush tip and they hold their shape really well. I actually really quite like them. They don't get quite small enough for me, so when I'm doing the eyeliner and the eyelashes, I do revert back to my tiny miniature detail brush. But for everything else, they work really well and I actually really like them. And you get 15 brushes in various sizes in the pack for $14. So it works out to being around about, a little bit less than $1 per brush, which I think is pretty great value. Gosh, the colors are so vibrant. Like, look at all these colors. That's just how they look too. Like, this isn't over boosted contrast or anything like that. They really are that vibrant. They look delicious. I will say though that the labels on the bottles don't quite match up to the colour that's inside the tube. Although, like all acrylic paints, or like all paints in general, they do change colour when they dry. So they do dry a little bit darker than how they look coming out of the tube, but it's just something about the labeling. The labels just haven't printed true to the colour that's in the tube, so that's definitely something to bear in mind. You're going to want to have a look at the paint inside the tube rather than just pick it by the label on the outside, because otherwise you're going to mess up. Something I did want to try before I jumped into doing the bunny was just to work on a straight traditional painting, use the paints as they were initially intended, just to get a feel for the colours and the consistency and all of that sort of stuff. So I painted this little Ewok Girl, and if you follow me on Instagram you will have seen it already. I didn't record the whole painting because I haven't done an illustration in, I can't even tell you how long. I started with the intention of filming the whole thing, and then I quickly realized that I had no idea what I was doing, and I was making so many mistakes, and I had so much footage that wasn't really going anywhere, and I was like, I don't even have the hard drive space for this kind of failure. So I turned off the camera, I just went ahead and I painted it. And then here I'm going to be adding the rind onto the watermelon, and I'm just hand painting this on because I wanted a nice crisp edge. So here I'm adding the white edge to the rind, and of course thinning down the paint makes it really translucent, but the way to get a nice smooth finish with your acrylics is to thin the paints down. So you have to do a lot of layers, and this goes for any brand of acrylics you're using. You just have to work on those layers if you want a nice smooth finish. So that's what we're doing here, and you can see it going down like it's almost invisible, and then with each pass it gets a little bit brighter and a little bit brighter. Their stuff is really affordable. So I think that if you're just sort of getting into painting and you're just starting out with dolls or figures, this is a really great way to get a really big range of colours for a really minimal amount of price, and you're still maintaining quality because the paints are of a really nice quality. They're not professional grade quality, but you don't need professional grade quality. Like, you've really got to weigh up whether or not you want to spend a crap ton of money on something that you're only learning, or if you would like to get something that you can learn on that's high quality and affordable. And I think, affordability goes a long way. I did get asked what I was using as a palette, and so I thought I'd just quickly show you guys that it's just a tile. It's like a 50-cent tile from Home Depot, and it's great because you can just scrape paint off when it dries. And I have this little Maxcraft paint scraper that I got off Amazon. I think it's like $4.99. I don't know, it's not very expensive. It just has a razor blade in the end, which you can swap out when it gets a bit too dull. And you just scrapey the paint off, and that's it. It's really satisfying. Here I'm using my La Cornell liner brush to do the eyeliner, and I'm also using my carbon black paint because it's an ink. As I was saying before, when you have to water down the paints, they become really translucent. So I'm going with an ink-based paint because I don't have to water it down because it's already at an inky consistency. It just saves time. So some of the things I really liked about trying these paints out in an airbrush was the really smooth surface that they gave. So they just left a really nice finish, which made for a really nice smooth base for all the hand painted details that I added afterwards. They also didn't clog up my airbrush, which was really great. Like, I know my bunnies are quite small, so I'm not having to do like a large surface area, but I did also airbrush the frame. So, I mean, it's not a huge frame, but it was a significant enough amount of airbrushing, and I didn't have any trouble with the paint clogging up the airbrush or the tip drying out or anything like that. I'm pretty sure this is also in part to the thinners and the retarders that I use, but some paints will separate when you add mediums into them, and these paints didn't, so I was really happy about that. They thinned out really nicely and they left a really nice smooth finish. I'm going to be using this pink to paint the inner waterline. Overall, I was really happy with how easy they were to use, though I will say you do need to work at thinning them out a little bit because it's designed to be a thick paint, so you're going to have little lumps and bits. You've kind of got to, make sure you smush them all out and really thin it all down. But I think that's to be expected when you're trying to use a heavy body acrylic that isn't at all meant to go through an airbrush. So for that, I think they were really quite successful, and yeah, I really liked them. Then I'm going to be using this burnt umber to do all the freckling. So I start off with a really translucent layer of freckles that you can barely see, and then I slowly build up the opacity of the paint. And I'm using this La Cornell liner brush, which is my standard go-to brush. It's just super tiny, so it's really good for these really ultra small details. And the Arteza brushes they didn't have any that were small enough. I wish they did though, because they're really nice quality brushes. And I like that they're synthetic, so they hold their shape really well. Because sometimes with the animal hair brushes, they curl a little bit at the tip, which is really annoying. So this here is one of the Arteza detail brushes. They are a really nice set of brushes, and I'll probably use them for doing larger areas and glossing and that sort of stuff. Here I'm adding the shadows to the top of the eyes, just to create some depth. And then I'm adding the catch lights back in. And this is her finished and unglossed. So I usually use 3 layers of gloss, and it dries to a really nice hard enamel finish. The brand I use is Tamiya, which I think is a Japanese brand, though I'm not 100% sure. It's a water-based acrylic gloss, and it's really versatile, and I love it. I use it for everything. And then I forgot to paint the bow, so we're now airbrushing the bow. So Arteza have kindly provided me with a coupon code for you guys, which will get you 10% off your order, and I'll add the code into the description below. It's going to be valid all the way through July until the 31st. They've also given me some affiliate links, and all that means is that if you use those links, it helps me out by giving me a small commission per each sale, and that's at no extra cost to you. And that money just goes back into the channel to help keep it running. I really love how these paints came out. They're so vibrant. I painted the frame and the backboard is all in Arteza paints as well. But they're just such vibrant paints, like the colour payoff is so good. I think, you'd be really hard pressed to get that range of colours at that quality for that price. It's really affordable. Like if you're just starting out and you want a big range of colours, this is the way to go. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for stopping by and watching this with me. I hope that was interesting and maybe a little bit different to the other Arteza videos that you might have seen. I don't know, let me know. Also, let me know what you might like to see next. I was thinking about doing a video on casting and moulding, so I don't know. Let me know. So that's all from me. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.